Crosscode is no joke, one of the best single player experiences I have ever had the fortune of finding. This little known indie game made by Radical Fish Games is narratively complex, mechanically interesting, varied in its environment, has bopping music, and has fascinating characters. I enjoyed my time with the game in my first playthrough, and after completing the game for a second time for this review, it was even better. Crosscode is a single-player RPG where you play as Leia, an avatar who has forgotten her past and is currently logged into an MMORPG called Crossworlds. This game takes place on a different planet, and the whole main story is built around something called the Track of the Ancients, where an ancient civilization who used to live on the planet have created a massive network of various dungeons and enemies that span the whole expanse. Crosscode's art style is pixel art perfection, highly detailed character models and emotions blending perfectly with its beautifully bright and vibrant environments. Each of the game's areas are distinctly different and memorable, and were very well depicted for the realistic but also pixel art style that it goes for. The gameplay consists of a quest system, where various NPCs give you tasks to complete, which range from killing a certain number of mobs to collecting an increasing list of drops from plants. The combat is the core of the game, a 2.5 hack and slasher with powered up ranged attacks. You can aim with a ranged weapon and spray with low damage balls, and then charge up the ball and bounce off angled walls to hit switches, as well as hit the enemies directly, and also shield their attacks with parries and dodges. The angled ball mechanic is expanded upon, starting as a simple puzzle mechanic where you bounce the balls off angled platforms to hit switches, and then expanding to include the elemental abilities you gain later on, which do various things like pass you through walls, teleport you to the other side of the room, electricity, giant nails. Also, you can light fires and burn down ice pillars. This, and the close combat hack and slash style where you stagger enemies to slice them to pieces, combines well with other mechanics being the break philosophy, where, as I previously stated, you can hit enemies at various specific times to break them and then stagger them and do a lot of damage very quickly. This mechanic allows for varied boss fights and also enemy encounters, where focusing one particular enemy can often be the key, but the other enemies are also attacking you, so you have to dodge and block and damage as quickly as physically possible. Adding on to the fact that you can charge up your abilities, this adds a lot of variance to combat, where it can often be fast-paced but also slow-paced due to the charging mechanic. Once aiming your balls at an enemy that is flashing red, you can break the enemies as well as also just hitting them in general. Finding these breakpoints and exploiting them will allow you to kill much more highly leveled enemies earlier on. You can also dodge, but unlike Dark Souls, the dodge is fast and responsive, able to be repeated up to 3 times in a row before you simply spin in place. The dodge encourages quick play, where you can shoot, dodge the enemy's attacks, counter-attack, shield a group of enemies, and the flow is just excellent. There's also a leveling system where you level up throughout the adventure, increasing your stats gradually, as well as unlocking new abilities that you can charge up, and also buffs to health, defense, and various other things. The enemies naturally level as well throughout each of the areas, and by holding shift and clicking the little magnifying glass, you can easily see whether the enemies are of level or not. As you progress through the areas, new quests, locations, and bosses are made available to you, which allows a natural evolution of this level design. Crosscode encourages you to do every single side quest to level up as quickly as possible, and you are often off level of the bosses or various story beats so that you can easily defeat them. Level design is one of the most interesting parts of Crosscode, as it has a unique layering system where each level has multiple elevations that the player can auto jump around, encouraging problem solving, exploration, and a feeling like the environment is expanding around and above the player. Rewards are found in small floating blue boxes that provide healing items, new weapons and gear, and unique golden items that can be used to craft better weapons and armor later in the game. Equipment also matters in Crosscode more so than your character level, as this encourages curiosity rather than pure skill, although if you're looking for a challenge, Crosscode also provides that. What you can do is get particular items from breaking plants and killing mobs, and then go back to the markets throughout each of the main areas and then buy specific equipment. This equipment has also got a level, and depending on the level of the equipment you are wearing, you will have an equipment level for your character as well as a level for your character. Without spoiling the main story of Crosscode, which has a lot of really unique characters and unique ideas, it is an intricate investigation on corporate greed, oppression, and identity, with lighthearted moments sprinkled throughout about friendship and companionship. Each of the characters are very unique and have lots of personality, not only commenting in cutscenes but throughout the game's runtime, as when you run around, a little box will pop up in the bottom left as they comment on various things. This can be a reference to the real world, the fact that they have cows in their hometown, for example, or it can also just be a reference to the game itself. For example, one of the characters loves talking about the light bridges that appear in each of the different areas. The world itself also carries the story, because it is both a unique expression of classic RPG tropes, but also has its own unique atmosphere due to the music and the various level design and also art assets of the world. This adds to the story with various level and atmosphere design decisions that add to the story beats. For example, the atmosphere of the first area, Autumn's Rise, differs greatly from a mid-game area, Gaia's Garden, with Autumn's Rise being light-hearted and open with bright colours and chilled music, while Gaia's Garden is wet and dismal, with splashes of colour sprinkled throughout. Also, something that differs between the two areas is the fact that Gaia's Garden has multiple distinct areas within its larger area, while Autumn's Rise feels almost the same throughout. This is due to the development cycle most likely, as Autumn's Rise was mostly made first. However, it also simplifies the gameplay, as at the beginning, it's quite easy to understand the basic mechanics that the game is trying to explain to you, but then later on, as the game grows more complex, it adds a lot of variety and interest. However, the main draw of Crosscode, and the thing that you'll be doing for the majority of its runtime, besides the story beats, will be the numerous side quests that populate each area of Crosscode. Some side quests are repetitive and appear at each of the main areas. However, they often vary due to the various tones and ideas of the area. For example, the Henry side quest that appears in every single area of Crosscode tasks you with doing all 4 elements of the game, being the combat, breaking plants to get items, exploring every single landmark in the area, and also finding a secret probe that he often places in a cave or area that is hard to reach. This both encourages exploration and also an expression of every single element of the game. Other side quests include collect side quests, where you collect a certain amount of various plant-based materials from current or subsequent areas for NPCs for EXP and money. This is probably the most boring side quests, as other side quests that are more common are the boss quests, where the first part of the quest often leads you through a puzzle cave with combat, and then in the second part of the quest you fight a unique powered up version of a normal enemy with bumping music. One of my favourite questlines that is unique and often difficult to find is A Promise is a Promise, where a stranger dressed like all 5 classes tasks you in each area to find broken weapons. Finding these weapons is a treat, where you have to track down secret areas with secret bosses that each have unique mechanics and interesting fights. There is one in each area, and you often complete it after you complete the game's main dungeons. Besides the quests I have discussed already, there are also quests from each of the 4 human factions, who each have special quests relating to their specific ideologies. However, these quests, while interesting, are nowhere near as fun as other quests that I have previously discussed. This isn't true for everything, but most of these quests can be janky. However, probably the best part of Crosscode, which combines every single element I have discussed so far, are the dungeons. There are currently 4 dungeons, and a 5th one is coming out soon. The 4 dungeons, I will not spoil their names, but each dungeon is very distinct in its level design and layout, and often emulates Zelda in the way that it loops back into itself, and also goes to other unique areas. The dungeons often have quests attached to them, which require you to kill certain enemies or get certain items, and also have very challenging puzzles that gradually teach you in a very naturalistic way how to use the various mechanics in the dungeon, and then increasing complexity to a point where the final puzzle is often very complex, requiring you to complete a number of different actions while something is happening. To give an example without spoiling too much, the very first dungeon, you have to fire a bullet, then you have to break 2 ice things, then you have to click a switch as quickly as you can so that the bullet can go through a wall, and you have to do all of this while the bullet is still firing in slow motion. This part of the game being the longest part, as the dungeons often can spend to take about 2 to 3 hours each, often are the most fun part of the game for me, because it combines all the elements while also being a challenging expression. Also, each of the bosses are super unique and very, very fun to figure out and like use items to kind of like figure out how not to die super quickly. On a final note, I really like the music in Crosscode, as it is a really unique mix of jazz and classical that both relaxes you in the emotional beats of the story and also revs you up in the battle scenes where it's the relaxing music also lulls you as you run through each of the areas, keeping a similar tone while also leaving a distinct impression on each of the areas. Whenever I teleport to an area during the game, I often exactly remember the feeling of the area and the feeling that I first felt when I went through the area the first time. The soundtrack composer, his name is Deniz, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Deniz Akbulat, captures the feeling of the game and is an excellent composer that I wish had more work on offer. Currently, he just worked on the newest addition to Crosscode, the newest DLC. As of this recording, I have not currently completed the newest DLC, or even completed the game for that matter. However, once I have completed the end game of Crosscode, and I have beaten the final boss, I will have a new update video on the DLC with all the content that it offers. I have heard very good things about it. There is a new arena mode with tons more bosses, there is new duels, there's new quests, there's a whole new area, there's a whole new kind of like story beat that adds to the epilogue of the story. Once I have done that, I will do a whole video on that DLC and talk about my thoughts on it. My thoughts on Crosscode is that it's one of the better single player experiences I've had in the past couple of years. Due to its varied mechanics and various things, you might think that it would be overwhelmed by the sheer amount of things you can do in the game. But Crosscode really melds all of its various disparate elements together in a very cohesive manner, to a point where there is almost no moment where I am bored in the game, except for the fact that you kind of have to grind for some of the items for the quests. But every so often, it's actually kind of fun because you are higher level than the enemies in the area, and you often, all you really need to do to get the items is go through the whole area, just like run through, and then defeat every single enemy and break every single plant, and you often get every single item that you require for the quest. So it's actually kind of fun to do that, and it adds a different element to the game that I just didn't expect, which is actually doing something again is fun, because the challenge of keeping in combat mode and defeating as many enemies as possible. Hello, thank you for watching the whole video if you did. I hope that these videos are improving in quality. I am trying my very best to add more pizzazz and interest to the videos. But if you really liked this video, please leave a like down below. Subscribe if you'd like to see more of this similar kind of content. I'm going to try and improve the quality and kind of upload rate of this channel. The vlogs I'm still experimenting with and still kind of figuring out what best fits with my style. But once I've done that, I hope that you stay around, and I hope that you enjoy the videos from now on. See you next time. Bye.